We're moving on. Beth Ann. In North Lanarkshire, you specifically focus on supporting schools in keeping the promise for care-experienced children and young people. One of those promises is to prioritise stable, loving relationships, particularly for children and young people who've experienced care. So what does this title particularly mean to you and your experience in education?
Thank you, Janine. I suppose I'm going to start with a quote that my good friend John Carnahan says quite a lot. No matter the question, the answer is relationships, essentially. So I suppose the work that you were referring to in the introduction speaks about how we can get our education colleagues and staff understanding what the promise means for them, how to put it into practice. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail at the end, but I suppose I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey as to why it's so important to me personally. So as a young person growing up in the care system, education was supposed to be my outlet, my relief. I was bright, I was clever, I really enjoyed going to school, but sometimes school didn't enjoy me being there. So from a very early age, I remember in primary 1 walking up to the dinner hall with no shoes on because my teacher had taken my shoes off because I kept playing with the Velcro, but I was searching for a sensory need. And the head teacher took me and said, "Where is your shoes?" And I said, "They're in the classroom." She threw them behind the piano. And she took me back and she said, "Get her shoes." And then again, the same head teacher, when I went into primary 2, I was dealing with life at home as it was, the change in transitions, the change in placements and things like that as well. And this teacher expected everybody to have a pencil, a rubber, a ruler and a pen. And I'll never forget what that same head teacher said at primary 2 is what she did at primary 1. It matters not that she doesn't have a pencil, rubber, ruler or a pen. She's here and she's willing to learn. And that was my motto going forward in my experience education for all those years, was I'm here and I'm willing to learn, like feed me some knowledge please. And then again, as things in my home life drifted and changed and moved on and things like that, that head teacher stayed with me. She would come and she would pick me up and she would physically take me to school on the days that I felt like I couldn't make it, and she would sit with me and she would say, "We can do this, we can do it together." I moved into a new residential home miles away from my family and my friends and my school, and she would come up every Sunday and she would take me to her family. She would welcome me in. Her mum was my gran. Like, we would go family dinners, we would do Christmases together, we'd do birthdays together. She didn't have to do that, but she did it for the love of me, and that's why I was really inspired about hearing about love and relationships tonight. Is she loves me. She's now a grandma to 13 grandchildren, and she always calls me the 14th grandchild. And as I was growing up, and as wherever I went in my journey, whether that was secure care, whether that was down in England, she was always there at the end of the phone and a visit or anything like that. And she would always say, "Education is the key. You can do this. We can do this." Then kind of moving on, one of my experiences within secure care, I entered secure care when I was 13 and I was there for over 18 months. I left when I was 22 months, sorry, I left when I was 16. And I was in 4th year, so I went from 3rd to 4th year in that transition period within the secure unit. And my exams were coming up, and I really wanted to sit them, and I was the last group of young people to sit standard grades. That shows you how old I am now. But I remember studying it really, really hard. The education team within the Secure Care Centre brought in tutors for subjects that they didn't do. They didn't do foreign languages because it wasn't deemed that young people like us should have the ability to access foreign languages. But actually pushing back on them and the team around the child that I had around me said, well, actually, why not? And it's about pushing those boundaries. Why not? Asking the question, why not? And then my exams were coming up. I was really excited, and I got out of secure care and I had no school to go to. So I was placed in a social work office with past papers and just sat there for 7-8 hours a day. I got 1 hour tutor for my French once a week, and that was it. That was my education. They didn't have an examiner, an invigilator. They didn't have a place for me to sit my exams. They didn't know what was going to happen. It was approaching kind of 2 weeks to my exams, and I was getting really antsy, and I was getting frustrated because I really wanted to sit my exams. And I ended up having to put myself back into secure care. I had to exhibit the behaviours that had got me to the point of secure care those 18 months before, and I had to do it all over again because the system wasn't designed to enable people like me who have experiences like I have to be able to sit their exams. So I entered secure care 5 days before my exams, and the manager, the education manager, sorted out an invigilator, a place to sit my exams, and a timetable. And I sat my exams. I got a 1 for English, I got a 1 for French, and I got a 2 for maths. Now, that doesn't seem like much. It doesn't seem that like 3 exams, and I always kind of feel a bit guilty about that as well. Sometimes I punish myself a bit on that, thinking you could have done more, but actually, in the whole ethos of what I was experiencing at that time, that was more than enough. And actually, it took me a long time to realise, actually, I'm proud of me. And I will continue to be proud of me. I'm still on a learning journey. I've spoken on public platforms before about I'm starting my SVQ4 and children and young people. I've got a good job doing what I love to keep the promise. And I suppose when our virtual school head teacher came to me and said we need to do something in our schools, and I said absolutely yes we do. And we developed this award. So basically what it means is our education staff, and that's everybody in the school setting, your janitors, your dinner ladies, the clerical assistants, it's everybody that comes together, they get educated on what the promise is. We have input from psychological services, we have input from care experienced people as well, and we speak about why it's so important. We talk about relational approaches, we talk about restorative practice, and at the end of it there's an e-learning module where there's over 4 sessions, so there's 4 kind of 1 hour sessions, and then there's the e-learning module, and at the end of the module, if 70% of the school staff have completed it, they get this Keeping the Promise award. We're not sure what that looks like yet, we're not sure, we've not got a badge, we've not got a flag, we don't know, but I suppose our starting point was we have to do something that's going to make a difference and have an impact, and I think that and the whole kind of experience that I've had and what drives me to the table. So my experience isn't all I bring to the table, but it's what drives me to the table, and it's what drives me to platforms like this. And I think the most important thing that I remember throughout my journey is the fact that I had one person cheering me on. I had one person as my cheerleader from the sidelines, and amongst it, whether it was the good, the bad, the ugly, and I had somebody that was determined that I would be claimed, that I would grow up loved, that I would grow up cherished. And that's the most important thing that we can do for our children and young people.